Hello, and welcome to Ed PR, the podcast that brings you the hottest trends in education from the best teachers around the country. Ed PR is brought to you by Learnerator.com.
Hello, and welcome back to Learnerator's Ed PR series. Today we're going to be talking about writing the college essay with Baird. Brett, you want to say hello to your adoring fans?
Hello, adoring fans.
Brett, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been teaching AP English literature for the last 5 years. I have written the AP content for Learnerator, and I'm working on the ACT. Worked at the Princeton Review as a test prep person and with the California Department of Education, helping them prepare the California High School exit exam. So I've got some street cred as far as test preparation.
Yeah, Brett's been on every side of the college entrance equation.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity also working for the Princeton Review to go to college admission seminars and speak to them, the people who actually read your essay. So I think I've got some pretty good ideas about what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Insider secrets. Awesome.
Yeah, I hope.
Great. So I'm looking here at a quote that you chose as sort of the quote that encapsulates the way you think about knowledge and school and learning. So can you talk me through this quote for a sec?
Yeah, I'm a real fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sadly, a lot of kids these days haven't really seen the show, but it's a very literate show because they're always faced with demons and vampires, and they have to run to the library to find out the answers. And in this issue, Rupert Giles, who's Buffy's watcher, says to someone who likes to get knowledge from a computer that smell is as important as the content. And he thinks that knowledge, it should be smelly. You should have some kind of texture to the acquisition of knowledge.
Yeah, there's sort of a tension there also between, this quote and the way that maybe the old school generation would think about acquiring knowledge and the way that we're acquiring knowledge today, and even working with Learnerator.
We use a lot of internet research, and certainly, and I'm not unfamiliar with technology, but there's just nothing that sort of replaces the experience of feeling and touching the actual book. I think I don't think books are actually going to go away.
This is some seditious stuff you're saying here, Brett, considering our digital platform. But don't tell anybody. I sort of agree. Okay, excellent. So we're going to move on to our topic of the day, which is, writing the college essay. So, Brett, you can go ahead and just take it away.
Yeah, in writing the college essay, you want to try to set yourself apart from the pack. And when I give the seminar to my students, I use models and non-models. A couple of the non-models, the things that you shouldn't do. I use this one that's about a kid who's applying for Harvard, and he goes on and on about his family and how his several brothers, how they each influenced him in various ways to pursue his education. And, well, it's wonderful, and we've all got the essay where, our mother helped us, get along, and we're doing, because education was important. But, you see, that's not really about your mom. I mean, your mom isn't applying to the college. You are. His brothers weren't applying to college. He was. And so while I think that essay is valuable and you should write it, give it to your mother and have her frame it and hang it on the wall, don't send it. You need to set yourself apart, and unfortunately many of us have some sort of an immigration story. So try to avoid that. There's another essay that I use that's called On Humor. And it's kind of the sort of standard 4-paragraph essay in which he says, humor has been very important in my life. And, this is an example of when I might use humor. And this is another example. And then in conclusion, I think that, it's not funny. I mean, if you're going to write an essay on humor, it better be funny. So those are not good models. Now, there's another one that I do like to use. I call it The Little Russian Girl, and it's about an exchange student from America who goes to Russia. And she meets this little Russian girl who literally sings for her supper. She stands on the street corners in the snow singing. And she explains how she's very moved by this and how she imagines what it would be like to have to go to this length and do this kind of thing. And she gives her money and etc. Now, you would think, and most of my students think, this is also not a good story because it's not about the person writing it, but it really is, because in telling the story of the little Russian girl, we see into the soul of the person who's writing the story. She's very empathetic, she's very generous, she's very giving, and you don't have to say, I'm very generous, I'm very empathetic, I'm very giving. You just tell that story, and we get an idea of who you are. So another one is he uses I'm an addict. It actually starts that way, and it's like, whoa, wow, good hook, dude. An addict, well, he's addicted to music. This guy's a trumpet player, and he talks about jumping up out of the band like a sharpshooter, and he talks about he doesn't have blood running through his veins. He's got notes, and he talks about I'm not only an addict, I'm a pusher. I like to teach music. Well, this is a guy obviously who's applying to a school that wants musicians, and so it's a really good story about why he is the way he is, and so you learn a little bit more about him apart from everything else that's on his college application essay.
So let me push back on a couple of things here. So looking at the non-model, the Harvard essay about family and ethnic identity, the problem there was that, whoever, the kid writing it was really writing about somebody else. Whereas with the little Russian girl, she's writing about somebody else, but it reveals some sort of, deep inner well of character that we can sort of see. So how do you strike that balance? So what was practically the difference?
You've got to get out of the head. You got to get out of the head of writing an essay. The Harvard thing was an essay in which he describes each of these family members from what they gave to him in the form of personal characteristics, and that's telling. That you're just telling me what characteristics you've got. In the little Russian girl, you're telling a story that shows me something. You put me on your shoulder, and I feel your empathy with you. And there's a big difference. Everybody's got family. Everybody's got a mother who supported them. And you want to be different. You want to be somebody that has had an experience that nobody else has had. So that even if you and your twin brother or your twin sister are applying for the same college, you had the same parents, you had the same experiences, the same teachers, you wore the same clothes, they'll take you and not her. That's what you want. You want something that's so specific to you. You want to move them somehow emotionally to want to be your advocate.
Okay, so you want to take sort of a general and maybe universal experience and sort of boil it down to something so narrow and so specific that it could only have applied to you.
Yes, you got to plumb your own experiences for those moments that where you had an epiphany. You really realize when did I really decide I need to be a doctor? I want to be a theoretical physicist. I have to become a musician, an artist, a playwright, whatever it is, but you plumb your memory for things that make you completely different from anybody else. And it can be something very simple. I had a student who wrote a really great essay, who's from Taiwan. At the age of 11, he was brought over here. He had to live with 6 of his aunts in the same 3-bedroom apartment, and he had to teach himself how to shave. He had no man to teach him how to shave, and so he watched a commercial, bought a razor, and butchered his face because he tried to do what he saw the model on TV do. And it was incredibly, it's like, it was just a little moment, but it's something that's unique, and without telling me, I came from a socioeconomically disadvantaged family. I had to live apart from my father. He just tells his story, and you get all that in that moment. It's like, here's this poor guy trying to teach himself how to shave with nobody there to help him. And it was very touching. It's like, oh, man, poor guy. That's what you want. You want them to go, oh, this kid's sensitive. This kid's smart. This kid's, but not by telling him I'm smart, I'm sensitive. By putting me on his shoulder in the form of a short story. Mm-hmm. Think of your essay as more of a short story instead of the sort of standard 3 to 5 paragraph essay that you're used to writing.
So it sounds like you should sort of think broadly about, a specific moment and then boil down everything into one discrete moment. So not just, not just like, I was going through.
You don't want to repeat. A lot of people, I get lots of these, and many kids want to give me a laundry list of all the things they've done in a particular club or all the things they've done in high school. But you see, that's someplace else in your application. Mm-hmm. Don't repeat anything they'll know your club involvement. They'll know your community service. Don't tell me that you did community service. It's already there. Tell me about that homeless guy that you sat down with and you talked to and you found something interesting about it, and that meant you had a human moment with. And then they go, oh, and that ties into the rest of your application. See, but you want to repeat anything, and if you do, but you want to bring a human element to it. You got to try to make them your advocate. You got to make them like you and to stand up for you.
So I'm looking here actually under best practices. You're telling us to write a short story and not to be repetitive, and then not to write cliche essays. So it sounds to me like to think outside of what you think that a college admissions officer would want to hear. So rather than talking about
10,000, there's every essay ever written about, when I threw the winning touchdown pass, or that I learned leadership and meeting a deadline in journalism class. Well, you know what? There are hundreds of thousands of kids who've taken a journalism class and have learned exactly the same thing. That's not what you want to write about. I read a really good essay about a young man who was the captain of the football team, who was the quarterback, but his essay is not about that. He talks about that, but he talks about the challenge that he had to overcome in stuttering. He found it very difficult, even though he's popular and presumably, very, well known and sort of the in crowd and all that sort of stuff. He never could express himself, and that was like, oh yeah, poor guy. It's like you're not necessarily making him feel sorry for you, but you want to make him feel something. You want to move them emotionally, hopefully not to nausea. You want to move them in some ways they think, wow, this kid, he could be the mayor of he could be the mayor of Newark. I mean, this kid, this is the kid we want to have in our music department, in our physics department. That's the kind of kid, that kind of fire. But you got to show it.
It sounds like you shouldn't be afraid to be vulnerable, right? You shouldn't be afraid to make yourself sound like a real person instead of a sort of a laundry list of accomplishments.
Yeah, with some caveats. I mean, you've got to be careful. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be talking about the time that you almost committed suicide. You don't want to talk about anything illegal, drug use, and that sort of stuff, right? That's vulnerable. You shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you want to show you've got to expose some of yourself to this, because sending your application out to college is like putting a letter in a bottle and you're throwing it in the ocean. You have no idea who's going to read it. You don't know why. You'll never meet that person. You will not know why you got into this school and you didn't get into that school. But you've got to try to touch them somehow. And if you touch them, then you end up, you want to be on that table where they say, I want this kid. He's perfect for our poli-sci department. Or I want this kid because he really sounds like he's going to, do a great job in our jazz band. This is the guy. And you want to get somebody on your side. And a bland essay, it may not hurt, but it may not help. And this is your only chance to change all the rest of the stuff. You don't have much choice to change anything else. Pretty much your grades are your grades, your test scores are your test scores. Your community service at this point, you can beef it up a little bit, but there's not much more you can do. But your essay, that's where you can make a big difference. So don't waste that opportunity.
In your experience, can an essay tip the scales from a no to a yes, or from a yes to a no?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. College admissions counselors tell me all the time that that's the thing that tips the balance. They're looking at 3 applicants who've got exactly the same grade point average, test scores, everything. And if one of them stands out as somebody they want to hang with, or it's just like going to a party, you dress yourself up, you want to look your best. If they say, this kid will fit in our student body, this is the person we want. That you got to try to make that person your advocate. See, I want this one, not these 2.
So tell me a little bit more about trying to make a well-rounded student body. So what does that mean?
Well, yeah, we get this idea, and I think it's promoted by a lot of teachers and a lot of other counselors that you need to be a Renaissance person, that you need to be good at everything. Well, you don't, because they don't really want a whole school full of kids who can do everything. They want a well-rounded student body. They want the best physicists in their department. They want the best electrical engineer. They want the best jazz musician. They want a piccolo player. Every 4 years, they need a piccolo player. They're going to get the best one. Band goes to the college and says, our piccolo player is graduating. We need a piccolo player. So they look for the best one. They want their student body to be well-rounded. They want people of all ethnicities. They want people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. That's what you make apparent. Not telling, but by just telling a story that you fit into that deal, and then they place you in that seat.
So here's a somewhat controversial question. If colleges are looking for a well-rounded student body, and presumably for minorities, ethnic minorities, racial minorities, minorities in socioeconomic status, would you recommend that a student play that up in an essay if they can make it?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Why not? I mean, just like the Taiwanese young man. I mean, you can't check a box anymore. I mean, they don't have they can't do the quota thing anymore. Mm-hmm. So the way they get around that is by choosing students of socioeconomic disadvantage, and you must point that out. And you do that again. You don't say, I'm socioeconomically a disadvantaged Hispanic student. You just tell a story about, what it was like to come home and have to study for your AP when your stomach was growling, or that you had to, try to get your essay done and go out and hang drywall that night. I mean, there's ways to do this by telling a story that you don't tell me, but you just show me your life, show me a moment in your life, and then I'll get it, okay? I get it. The kid is living in a 3-bedroom house with 6 aunts and no male influence. Mm-hmm. I get it. They don't have a lot of money, and they're and obviously, in the process, you get the idea that he's Asian and that he doesn't have a whole ton of money.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's sort of grounded in a sense of place and a sense of time rather than just sort of general.
Exactly. Yeah, don't make it general. Make it very specific and play to your strengths. And some of the strengths are they're looking for students of color. They're looking for, and the way they kind of get around that, the quota thing is that they say, well, we're looking at socioeconomically disadvantaged. Well, sadly, in this country, that's generally students of color. But if in your essay you can, make mention of your culture and make mention of the struggles that your family is going through, or you perhaps have gone through, that can be an advantage for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any other sort of general advice before we move on to the rapid fire round?
No, I don't think so. Other than just you gotta make them like you. Okay, it's just like just like anything else in life. You wanna. They are looking. It's like you got to think of yourself as, you're not begging for a seat. The seat is empty. You just want to make sure that it's you that gets to sit in it. So make yourself as attractive as possible. Make sure that everything in your application all points toward the same person. Make sure your letters of recommendation sound like the way you've described yourself. And then they go, okay, there's no inconsistencies here, and everybody's saying the same thing about this person, including themselves, and they fit our student body.
Would you recommend, so as a last sort of follow-up question, would you recommend that students tailor essays for a specific school? So, for example, if you're applying to a school with a really well-known poli-sci program, would you recommend that students sort of play up that strength, their sort of poli-sci strength, or would you recommend that students just, write about what they would have written about anyway? Write about something that's very specific.
Well, the personal statement, you can basically write one personal statement that it can be massaged to fit. But again, remember, you're not trying to be the well-rounded student, and you're not trying to. Obviously, the Little Russian Girl, the way it was written, it's more. That might be better for somebody who's applying to a liberal arts or as an undeclared major or something that's not very specific. But the person who's writing about, I am an addict, and he clearly wants to get into a school that's got a strong music department. So you might want to consider writing an essay in which you discovered your unabiding need to become a theoretical physicist, but it's not required. It's really some of your other stuff is going to show that, but we want to show you as a human being, as a person who's got something to offer in a human way as well as academically.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Brett. So we've heard some really great advice from Brett, so now it's time to hear about some of the best advice that Brett has ever received. So tell us about the best teaching advice you've ever gotten.
Well, best advice I ever got was when somebody once told me, I think I was in the lunchroom, complaining about a student and their behavior in the classroom, and he said, look, you can't take this personally. We all get into teaching because we love what we teach, Chemistry teachers love chemistry. PE teachers love physical education. They love sports. I love literature, and I know that education is valuable. And when a kid falls asleep in class, or doesn't show up, or turns in work late, or acts out in class, the human impulse is to take this personally. And and that really is not the case. Oftentimes, when you actually ask the student, what's going on? How come you turn this in late? You find out some very interesting things. I didn't turn this in because I had to stay up all night hanging drywall with my dad because my dad lost his job, or my apartment burned down, or there may be some other reasons. You got to reach out and you got to see what's going on, because often what you think is going on isn't what's going on. And the best way to do that is not take it personally, them not paying attention to you, but then reach out to them personally and see what's going on in their lives.
It sounds like good life advice, just full stop, not just great teaching advice.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of a human need. I'm very, very good at a lot of things, but I can't read their minds. And to know that there are other things in their lives that are going on. I don't know. Some kids, they may have just broken up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or they may be going through a rough patch. They're homeless. I had a student who was homeless last year, and I found out that he was couch surfing on friends' couches because he had no place to stay. That kind of thing. I can't take the fact that he didn't turn stuff in personally because he doesn't have a place to study or a place to sleep.
Yeah, that was something in my classroom. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and just realizing that even at such a young age, students have such rich inner lives that I don't know anything about unless I ask. Absolutely, yeah. So, aside from sort of cultivating this habit of empathy, what is one personal habit that you have that has led you to teaching success?
Well, I think that probably just hitchhikes on the same thing. It really was that advice to not take things personally and to really reach out. That development of that empathy has probably been the most successful technique that I've found. You can have all sorts of personal habits like being on time every day and being prepared for class and all that, and you got to do that. That's part of being a professional, being a teacher. But I think what really sets apart good teachers from great teachers is their ability to connect on a human level with their students, and it's one of those things that's taken me. It took me a decade to figure it out. But the more that I reach out, and again, when you reach out to somebody, there's a vulnerability in that. You've got to sort of leave yourself open to be rejected. But I think that's been a valuable habit to encourage myself. And you'd be surprised because they respond to that quite well. And then you can say, look, I know you do it for me. And then they will. Oftentimes when they won't do it for themselves, if you've established a rapport with a student, sometimes they won't do it for themselves, but they'll do it for you. They just say, hey, come on, put your name on the paper. Write me the first paragraph. Get them to start, and oftentimes you can teach them by reaching out that way.
Yeah, I always found that if they were afraid of, disappointing you, that was so much more powerful than if they were afraid of detention. Detention is nothing, but disappointment that stays with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what's your favorite teaching resource?
Google. Like Google, or any, obviously. Okay, I like, and I treasure, and I've got a whole bookshelf full of books. But, my homepage is Google. And there's just we live in such a fabulous age of being able to acquire knowledge so rapidly and from so many sources. I use YouTube all the time. I teach poetry, and it's really helpful to put on gather up a bunch of YouTube videos of young people doing poetry slams. Poetry slam is one of they've written their own poetry and they perform it live on stage in front of an audience, and to show them that poetry isn't dead. It's not a whole bunch of old dead white guys. I mean, there's people just like you out there writing this stuff, and they're all using the same technique. Or, throw up a YouTube video of a music video and say, look, it's just, the lyrics to songs. It's just poetry. That's music. And take it apart using the same text literary devices as in, something by, some old guy, Byron or something. same techniques, right? But we're still using them and it's still relevant. So yeah, using the internet in all its forms is a vital teaching resource.
I think we're going to have to get you back on a different podcast just talking about slam poetry and all of that.
Oh, yeah. I've got some good ones.
Oh, amazing. I'd love to hear about them. But quickly, before we go, imagine one day you wake up and you're the principal of your high school. What's the first thing you do?
Quit. I'd quit. First thing I would do is quit, because I'd want to be in front of the classroom. If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. I would be a terrible principal. I have the highest degree of respect for principals. I have one of the best principals on the planet, and I would not want her job for anything in the world. It looks to me like the most thankless job on the planet, because you got the supervisors and the administration on one side of you, and you got the teachers on the other side of you. I belong in front of the classroom. I do not belong in the principal's office, and I would not. I'd quit.
This is how you know you're in the right profession. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. Brett, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about the college essay and giving us all sorts of secrets and insider tricks.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. If you have any questions for Brett, or if you'd like to see his amazing AP English Literature content on Learnerator, please go to Learnerator.com. If you've got any questions or comments, email us at hello@Learnerator.com. And stay tuned for our next podcast, which is Secrets from the AP Table Reading. You won't want to miss that one.
You've been listening to Ed PR, your one-stop shop for all things ed-related. Want to join the conversation? Write to us at hello@Learnerator.com.